Welcome back to Cobbs Corner. I'm your host, Morgan Cobbs. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing The Count of Monte Cristo. Count of Monte Cristo is an action-adventure drama from 2002, directed by Kevin Reynolds, the book was written by French author Alexandre Dumas and Jay Wolpert. It stars Jim Caviezel, Guy Pearce, and Christopher Adamson. A young man, falsely imprisoned by his jealous quote-unquote friend, escapes and uses a hidden treasure to exact his revenge. The Count of Monte Cristo is an adaptation of the Alexandre Dumas tale by the same name. Dantes, a sailor, is falsely accused of treason by his best friend Fernand, who wants Dantes' girlfriend Mercedes for himself. Dantes is imprisoned on the island prison of Chateau for 13 years, where he plots revenge against those who betrayed him. With help from another prisoner, he escapes the island and proceeds to transform himself into the wealthy Count of Monte Cristo as part of his plan to exact revenge. Let's go to Cobb's Corner. So the movie is set in 19th century France after Napoleon Bonaparte has been exiled to the island of Elba, and he was being held there by the British, and apparently the British, they didn't want to take any chances of Napoleon escaping, so they had pretty much an intense military presence on that island, and they fired at pretty much anyone who would dare sail by that island, no matter how desperate or innocent they might have been. So the opening scene, we see Edmond Dantes, played by Jim Caviezel, and Guy Pearce. Fernand Mondego, played by Guy Pearce. And you might recognize Guy Pearce. He also played Aldrich Killian in Iron Man 3. And he's not the only superhero actor who is in this movie. We'll get to that later on. But we see them, apparently their ship's captain is sick, so they, out of desperation, sailed over to the island of Elba, and we see how Edmond, he is, I guess, second mate, and then first mate, who, I'm blanking on and then his first mate, Danglars. I was blanking on the name for a minute. Yeah, Danglars, played by Albie Whittington. Yep, he's the first mate, and Edmund is the second mate. They end up going to the island of Elba and fighting off a bunch of British troops. Napoleon shows up and says how he will help them heal their doctor. Napoleon, who is, again, technically a prisoner there, and technically imprisoned there by the British. And unfortunately, the captain dies, but Napoleon gives Edmund an important letter to deliver to somebody on Marseille, which is where they're from. And Edmund takes this task, but then he is right, and then he's also has a girlfriend back home, Mercedes, played by Dagmara Dominsk. probably mispronouncing that. So we see how, and after the death of the captain, Edmond has been promoted to captain. So he has his captain's papers. He's officially the captain of their ship, and he, is ready to settle down with Mercedes. Although he says, I can't afford a ring. She says, I don't need a ring. She literally tears off a piece of the blanket, ties it around her finger, says this will be my ring. I will never take it off. And so yeah, the two of them. So yeah, think things are going great for Edmond, but of course, his quote unquote best friend Fernand is jealous of him and really just and sort of turns him in to the High Magistrate Villefort, played by James Frain, who then ends up having Dantes locked up. He ends up going to the Chateau d'If, the prison, the Chateau d'If prison, to which Edmond Dantes tells the marshal working there how he's like, I know you must hear this a lot, but I am innocent. I am truly innocent. So, yeah. But for those of us who watching the movie, we actually know that Edmond Dantes is innocent, and he spends and during his time there, he encounters a priest who is played by Christopher Adamson, and the priest teaches him how to read and write. The preacher teaches him how to read and write, and teaches him how to teaches him mathematics, economics, and mathematics, economics, the way of the sword. Oh no, scratch that. The priest is played by Richard Harris. Yeah, the late Richard Harris, who actually passed away the same year that this movie came out. The movie came out, I think, January 25th. Well, I think it came out January of 2002. He died October 25th, 2002, just months after the movie's release. He was also in Gladiator, Harry Potter's 1 and 2, The Unforgiven, A Man Called Horse. So yeah, the late Richard Harris plays the priest. Abi Faria. Priest teaches Edmond how to read and write, because again, Edmond is illiterate at this point. How to read and write. Teaches him mathematics, economics, the way of the sword, and they come up with a plan for digging their way out of the prison. And essentially what happens is they're in their prison cells, their slot at the bottom opens twice a day, once for their meal and then once for their toilet bucket. So the plan is they hide the dirt in the toilet bucket, and they between those times they have the entire day to work freely and to go back and forth between each other's prison cells, and over time, over time, over years really, they dig their way out. And there's even a couple fun scenes where the priest teaches Edmond Newton's laws of motion. I'm like, all right, yes, we're learning STEM, we're learning mathematics. Edmond kind of loses his faith a bit. He starts to question the existence of God, and it's not entirely confirmed, I don't think, whether or not Edmond is religious or not. There's an inscription on the wall in his cell that was written by whoever was there before him called God. It says, "God will give me justice," and Edmond pretty much traces this same inscription again and again, God will give me justice, God will give me justice. So, and over time he becomes close with the priest, and the priest tells him about how the reason why he's in prison was because he fought alongside Napoleon. He was general or something, and then so he had a position in Napoleon's armies, but then he had a task of burning down a church with everyone still in it, and to his shame, he actually went ahead and did it, but then he deserted and spent his entire life repenting. He became secretary to like some nobleman, who then threw him in prison because he claimed not to have knowledge of Sada. There's like a giant bunch of gold buried in Sada, or like near Monte Cristo. But he lied, and he was thrown in jail. So that's how the priest ended up in prison. Eventually, now in total, Edmond was in prison for 13 years. And so at the 13-year point, as they're digging their tunnel, they see plant roots, which means they're only a couple months out. But then as they're digging, their tunnel starts to collapse in on itself. Edmond's able to pull the priest out, and then the priest uses his dying breaths to share with Edmond the map to all the gold buried in Sada near Monte Cristo. So then Edmond actually, after the guards have come with the body bag essentially for the priest's corpse, Edmond has a very clever plan of taking the priest's body through the tunnel, leaving the priest's body in his cell, and then he himself going inside of the body bag. So the marshal and everybody, they take Edmond Dantes' body alive in the body bag. They carry him up to this cliff. They don't know that it's him, and then just as they're about to throw him off, Dantes grabs the keys and pulls the marshal to the water with him. And so Dantes escapes. He kills the marshal. He swims over to some beach about 2 miles away from Chateau. He meets Luigi Vampo, played by J.B. Blanc, an Italian smuggler who tells him that he has to kill Jacopo, played by Luis Guzman, in order to join their crew. But at the last second, he says Jacopo is the best with the knife. To which Edmond Dantes says, maybe you just need to get out more. So the two of them duel, but Dantes refuses to kill Jacopo. Refuses to kill Jacopo, and says, those crew members who wanted to see a bit of sport have seen it. You now have one extra member of the group. You now have one extra member of the group, and it's now we can all travel together. To which Jacopo is now in Dantes' debt. Now Jacopo says, I will follow you, I will protect you for the rest of your life. I will always be by your side. And they give Dantes the name of Zatara, which apparently means driftwood. And for the next 3 months, Dantes is living with this pirate crew, and they make their way back to Marseille, and now it's it's all it's all starting to come full circle. We're starting to see, but we see an entirely new Dantes. We see an entirely new Edmond Dantes, who I think at this point, he's not even played by, if I'm not mistaken, he's played by Barry Casson. I think Barry Casson, who plays the old Edmond Dantes. But oh no, Barry Casson I think plays Dantes' father. My bad. And so Dantes has come back. Has come back to Marseille. He's gone to see. He realizes that his father had hung himself after hearing about Edmond's treason. How Mercedes is now wedded with Fernand. Has now wedded Fernand so soon, like, you know, quickly after the fake news. Okay. I'm just being honest. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. They had Dantes declared dead, knowing full well that he was actually like in prison. So Mercedes, she settles down with Fernand, and Edmond, he visits his old employer and even leaves him with some money. And his last words are, "Edmond Dantes is dead," which I think is a nod to how we see, like, I guess, 3 different Edmonds throughout the film. We see Edmond Dantes during, like, maybe the first act, like pre-prison Edmond Dantes. We see Edmond Dantes while he's in prison, and then we're going to see Edmond Dantes, aka Zatara, as the Count of Monte Cristo. So he's saying Edmond Dantes is dead. Him saying the old me is dead. You know, everybody, you know, nobody knows that he's actually Edmond Dantes. He claims to be a friend of Dantes, but so he tells Jacopo to go buy a ship, and they got a little, you know, skiff, something that the two of them can maintain. They sail over to Sada and pick up all this gold, and as they're on the beach, Jacopo tells him how all your problems are gone. You know, whatever your problems were, they are gone. You know, what would we use this money for? And Dantes says revenge. You know, and Dantes says revenge, to which Jacopo says how, like, we can literally just go to Paris and kill, you know, Villefort, Fernand, you know, and, you know, whoever wronged you, you know, we can go and just kill them, bang, 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 bang. To which Dantes replies, death is too good for them. So, yeah. To which Dantes replies, like, death is too good for them. We have to, you know, I have to, like, actually ruin their lives, you know, Danglars included. So of course they take this money, and with the money that they have, and there's still a ton of money left that they weren't able to take with them all at once, they go to Paris, and they purchase a giant mansion from one of, like, the nobles. Like, Jacopo literally just shows up and says, like, "Hi, I'm ready. I'm prepared to purchase your house." And then they just walks over to the horse carriage, opens the back, and then that man was like, "All right." So he was like, "Hey, say less. Here's the keys. Like sign your name here. Here's the keys. Have fun." And then, so now Dantes, with this inheritance, he has used it to pretty much become the Count of Monte Cristo, to pose as the Count of Monte Cristo. He sends invitations out to, like, all of France, and then shows up to the party on a hot air balloon. That is exactly how I will be showing up to any live episode from now on, just, like, showing up on a hot air balloon. That's how I'm going to show up to work one day. Just show up on a hot air balloon. That's kind of just his way of saying, like, you know, come at me, bro. And yeah, just at this point, just, like, living vicariously through Dantes. I mean, he becomes the Count of Monte Cristo. He realizes that apparently Fernand and Mercedes have a son, who then Dantes realizes has gone to Rome. Son played by Henry Cavill, who you'll remember as the now former actor of Superman. Yep, so Henry Cavill well, a young Henry Cavill. You know, this movie's 21 years old, and he goes over to Rome, but then he's captured by Luigi and his crew, who were hired by Edmond in the first place, and then after Alberto Mondego is their son's name. Oh yeah, and at this point, Fernand is a count. He is now the count. He is now Count Mondego. Yep, he is now Count Mondego after his father passed away. So now he's Count, and then Mercedes is the Countess Mondego, and so Albert Mondego is supposedly their son. And so Albert escapes. Edmond tells Luigi and everybody, "Good job." Albert has breakfast with Edmond the next day, and at some point during their breakfast, the words gold and shipment come up accidentally. So now Albert has knowledge of the gold shipments that they're shipping to Marseille, and Fernand tries to steal it. Tries to steal the inheritance, but then ends up getting apprehended by the French, and then Edmond devises this plan to apprehend Fernand, and pretty sure he actually kills Danglars. So yeah, now we're starting to see, Edmond Dantes. He's on the warpath, and he even stops Villefort for committing treason, for essentially wrongfully imprisoning him. Finds Villefort in a public sauna, and apprehends him there. So, and eventually, Dantes finds out that Albert is actually his son. That Albert is actually the offspring of Mercedes and Edmond, and not Mercedes and Fernand. Hence why Mercedes was so quick to marry Fernand after Edmond's supposed death. So, because chances are she was already pregnant with Edmond's child. So she was so quick to settle down with Fernand and just say, look, he's Fernand's child, and give him Fernand's last name. But Mercedes finally, she tracks down Edmond, who again at this point is the Count of Monte Cristo, and tells him that he's Edmond, and that he has essentially left her and abandoned her, and the two of them, they make up, and I guess they're together again, as Fernand attempts to escape after he's been charged with all these criminal acts. He attempts to escape, but then finds that whatever chests of gold he might have stolen, whatever chests of gold he might have stolen, they're not there anymore. And then he is stopped by Edmond, who challenges him to a sword duel, and then the fight is interrupted by Albert, who Edmond then tells, who Edmond, along with Mercedes, they explain that Albert is Edmond's son. And then in an attempt to escape, Fernand shoots Mercedes, who survives. And the movie ends with a duel between Edmond and Ferdinand, where Edmond is forced to kill his quote-unquote best friend, Fernand Mondego. Edmond buys the Chateau d'If. Well, I think the very last scene in the movie, Edmond, he buys the Chateau d'If. He says, I bought this in hopes that I would burn it down one day, but now everything that I love in life is standing right before me, referring of course to his wife, his son, Jacopo, who has been by his side ever since the start of his plot for revenge. Says, everything I love in life is standing right in front of me. I have found peace. And the movie ends. I can't remember if it's the last shot of the movie or the last shot in the prison where we see that inscription, God will give me justice. So in a way, God has given him justice. And, well, I've mentioned this before on this podcast. I understand that this movie is not really a religious movie. I've mentioned in the past that I myself am a Christian. And I raised Christian, still am a Christian to this day. Says in the Bible, says in the Bible that vengeance belongs to the Lord, so that we should not seek vengeance ourselves. So even after all that, Edmond has found peace, and he sought out justice. He said, God will give me justice. God has given him justice. And vengeance belongs to the Lord. Religious significance aside, this movie, regardless of what you believe in, for those of you listening, this movie is a tale not only of revenge, but of making the best out of your situation. You see, Edmond could have given up in prison, going to prison for a crime that he did not commit. He could have given up. He could have said, I'm going to die in here. What's the point of me trying to escape? And at one point he did tell the priest, either you teach me the way of the sword or you dig alone. And the priest's last words to Edmond were, do not commit the crime for which you now serve the sentence. And that really resonated with me, and anyway, because a lot of times in life things happen. You may not want them to happen, but they do. And the answer is never killing or taking a life, because Edmond he was serving for murder, which he was innocent, treason and murder. The priest said, do not commit the crime for which you now serve the sentence, and that vengeance belongs to the Lord. As Edmond did his best to make the best of his situation. Again, he could have just given up. Could have accepted defeat, but no, he was determined to leave that prison. He was determined to dig his way out, to learn all that he could, learn how to read and write, because it's my understanding that at that time, 18th, 19th century Europe, not every man knew how to read and write. Like, literacy wasn't really commonplace at that time, not like it is today. But he learned all that he could: mathematics, economics, science, literacy, physics, different languages, and yeah, he worked his way out. He could have just stayed there. He could have just given up, and nobody would have judged him for doing so. He could have given up. He could have accepted defeat. And again, nobody would have judged him for doing so, because it's almost like a question of what would you do if you were in prison, if you were wrongfully convicted, if you were wrongfully convicted and in prison. Would you just sit there and serve your sentence for a crime that you didn't commit? Or would you do everything in your power to get up out of there? It doesn't even have to be like, prison. It's like, a lot of times, and I know I'm about to quote, Rocky Balboa, but, there's that scene where he's talking with his son in the movie Rocky Balboa, where he says, life ain't always sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. And nobody's going to hit you as hard as life itself. Nobody. No opponent is going to hit you as hard as life. But it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward, because that's how winning is done. For Edmond to be thrown in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and for 13 years dig his way out, learn all that he could, and come out of that prison a new man. I kind of see the parallels between the Count of Monte movies, like the Count of Monte Cristo. I can see the parallels with maybe Gladiator and Iron Man, because in Gladiator you have Maximus. He went from being a general to then being a slave to then being a gladiator. We see three different versions of the same character. Edmond, he went from being first mate, who was promoted to captain, to then being a prisoner, to then being a count. Iron Man, he went from a peace-hating, and I've talked about this on my very first episode. Check it out, my review of Iron Man. In Plato's allegory of the cave, he was a peace-hating, war-mongering arms dealer who was humbled, who was brought to his knees by life, essentially. Life brought him to his knees. He was forced to look at his legacy. He was forced to view his legacy and what he and how he created weapons of mass destruction, and then came out of that cave a new man. Same story with Edmond Dantes. Even you could argue with Malcolm X. In high school I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I watched Spike Lee's movie Malcolm X, and we see three Malcolms. There was the Malcolm, the hustler. There was Malcolm, the hustler, the pimp, the criminal. And then there's Malcolm when he was in prison, and he converted to Islam and changed and turned his life around during his 10 years in prison. The entirety of his 20s. He got locked up at 20 years old, younger than me. And then at 30, when he left, then after being released from prison at 30, he came out a new man and went on to become one of the leading voices in the American Civil Rights Movement. So this movie, the main takeaway is always make the best of your situation. Never just accept defeat. Never give up, regardless of whatever it is that you're going through. It doesn't have to be you being wrongfully accused of a crime. That's just the example in this movie. It could be anything, big or small. You lose your job, or you go through a breakup. Life will knock you down time and time again. It'll bring you to your knees, and it'll keep you there if you let it. If you let it, it will keep you there. But that's the key, is to get back up again and take each day that we have on this earth as an opportunity to improve your life, to become your best self, regardless of your circumstance, regardless of whatever curveballs life may throw at you. Make the best of your worst times. Make the best of your worst days. So this movie has a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Yeah, I would say that it earns that 7.7. I think as a movie, it's great. I did mention, I think it was last week's review when we reviewed Catch Me If You Can. I pointed out how a lot of these movies are based off of books. I think actually the last 3 movies have been based off of books. Fight Club, Catch Me If You Can, and The Count of Monte Cristo. These are all based off of books. The Count of Monte Cristo as a book, it was written in the 19th century, and it's over 1,000 pages long. So, maybe one day I will actually read this book and then go back and rewatch The Count of Monte Cristo. But yeah, I mean, if any of you are actually willing and able to read over 1,000 pages first and then see the movie, that is commitment. All right, salute to all of you who are willing to actually do that. Before I get into the trivia and the behind the scenes, I'd just like to inform you that this movie is, now, contrary to Google says that this movie is available on Pluto TV for free. I checked that out, and it's not the 2002 version. It is the version of the movie from the 70s. Yeah, apparently there was a Count of Monte Cristo movie in the 70s, so I guess the 2002 film is technically a kind of remake, although both movies are based off of the same book. So kind of like how there's 2 A Raisin in the Sun. There's the Raisin in the Sun from the 60s with Sidney Poitier, and then there's the 2008 remake with Sean Combs. Both movies are based off the same book. So no, it is not available on Pluto TV. It's not really on any streaming service as of the recording of this podcast. I literally had to purchase the movie on YouTube. Yeah, but it's available for purchase or rent on Google Play Movies, on YouTube, on Apple TV, Vudu, Amazon Prime Video, and Redbox. But you'd have to actually rent or purchase the movie on any of those services. It is not available for free on any of these streaming services, unfortunately. On with the trivia. As my computer. So before the trivia, I'd like to just kind of run through the top cast on IMDb. The top cast, as previously mentioned, Jim Caviezel played Edmond. Fernandez played by Guy Pearce. Guy Pearce, who also played Aldrich Killian in Iron Man 3. Maurice is played by Christopher Adamson. Luigi Vampo, played by J.B. Blanc. The mansion owner, played by Guy Carlton. Old Man Dantes, played by Barry Casson. Albert Mondego, played by Henry Cavill, known for The Witcher and for movies like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, Justice League. Casino Prostitute, played by Brianna Corrigan. Viscount, played by Brendan Costello. Partygoer number 2, played as May Reed Devlin. Mercedes, played by Dagmara Domingzik. Partygoer number 3, Stella Feely. Again, apologize if I mispronounce any of these names. If any of these actors are listening, or any diehard fans of these guys. Villefort, played by James Frain. Morel, played by Patrick Godfrey. Jacopo, played by Luis Guzman. He was the father in Wednesday Addams' father. Partygoer number 1, Joe Hanley. Ab Fair, played by Richard Harris. Julianne, played by Catherine Holm. Directed by Kevin Reynolds, written by Alexandre Dumas and Jay Wolpert. Alright. Taglines: Prepare for adventure, count on revenge. Motion pictures rating is rated PG-13. Did you know... Screenwriter Jay Wolpert came up with the idea not present in the novel that Fernand Mondego, Guy Pearce, and Edmond Dantes started out as best friends. His logic was that it would work better as a buddy film that turned sinister. Wolpert believed that when a friendship soured, the hate generated was both more terrible and more believable. Well, yeah, I guess creative liberties were taken, but yeah, I mean, when a friend turns on another friend, it's it's that betrayal is even worse when it's somebody who you've loved and trusted your whole life. So yeah. The Count of Monte Cristo was one of Mark Twain's favorite books. Mark Twain's from the state of Connecticut. When Twain toured Europe in 1867, he made a special stop to see the prison, the Chateau. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn contains a humorous spoof of Monte Cristo. I haven't read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but I'm wondering, is the prison Chateau d'If, is it closed now, or does it exist? I have been meaning to visit France one of these days. But yeah, Mark Twain, he's from Connecticut. The encounter with Napoleon on Elba is a sequence created specifically for the film, since the book begins with the Pharaon's return to Marseille and Edmond recounting what happened. The filmmakers felt that actually showing the events was more cinematically interesting than Edmond just talking about them. So it's funny that that's not mentioned in a book that's over 1,000 pages, but yeah, I guess this is another way of taking creative liberties and adding stuff, because a lot of times with film adaptations of books, they might add some things that's not in the book, and they might take some stuff out. Some stuff that's in the book doesn't make it to the movie, and then they might compensate for that by adding in things that would work for the purpose of the film, but that were not mentioned in the book. So it's a trade-off. The movie was filmed in Malta and Ireland. I'm getting my tickets for, Malta, Ireland, I am coming your way. To my listeners in those parts of the world, Malta, Ireland, I'm coming your way. I'm buying my tickets right now. Soon as we finish this episode, I'm buying my tickets for Malta and Ireland. I know Ireland, that's where they filmed The Last Jedi. Okay. Moving on. Powers Court House in County Wicklow stood in for the Parisian estate Dantes buys. Powers Court House in County Wicklow. That's where I'm going. Getting my ticket right now. Soon as we finish this episode. The location of the Chateau d'If is actually an old castle in Malta, and is now used by the Maltese military as a communications and weather station. Oh, okay, communications and weather station. Again, Malta. Anybody listening? Anybody listening in Malta? I'm coming your way. I will be seeing y'all soon. All right, back. Some of the goofs. Continuity. Edmund's eye color fluctuates between brown and blue throughout the movie. When Edmund and Albert are discussing visiting Paris at the breakfast table, Edmund signs the papers and Jacopo removes them all. In the next camera shot, a stack of papers is on the table. Wow. So yeah, eye color fluctuation, and yeah, it happens in movies. Some actors will forget the blocking, and then continuity is broken. But that's only something that eagle-eyed viewers will actually pay attention to. At the end of the knife fight with Dantes and Jacopo on the ground, Dantes' knife changes between shots. Wow. Well, I guess you also have to probably figure maybe they don't do these scenes in one take. Maybe they don't film one scene in maybe they don't finish an entire scene in one day. Props department. So last one I'll read. When Edmund and Abby are crawling through the tunnel, Abby's breath blows out his candle, and he is talking to Edmund. The camera switches to Edmund as they are talking then back to Abbey. The candle is alight, yet no sound of striking match or tinderbox can be heard. All right, so I wonder if that was intentional. So, factual errors. When the Count buys his estate house, he pays for it with a wagon full of gold coins. In reality, that much gold would be far too heavy for a wooden wagon to support. That's again one of those it's a movie moments. In the opening scene on the beach, Dantes and Mondego are being chased by British redcoats on horseback. Redcoats of the type depicted were only worn by British infantry who never rode on horseback. Britain had separated mounted musket troops, dragoons, who wore entirely different uniforms and colors, generally blue and gray. So yeah, that's a bit of factual errors. Incorrectly regarded as goofs. Edmond can't read, but then he engraves the words, "God will give me justice," on the stone wall while in confinement. However, the engraving was already there when he entered prison. The warden told him what the text said, and he simply traced over it later. So that's not a goof. Revealing mistakes. When Albert is brandishing his sword against the Count, the sword's safety tip is visible. Okay, well, you have to understand, Henry Cavill, he was 19 at the time? Probably 18 at the time, so, again, another error. When Edmond Dantes goes to see Villefort for the first time, the clock on the tower is painted on. Wow. Probably made zero effort to hide that. But yeah, these are all stuff that eagle-eyed viewers would notice. I'll read one quote from Edmond. "Life is a storm, my young friend. You will bask in the sunlight one moment, be shattered on the rocks the next. What makes you a man is what you do when the storm comes. You must look into that storm and shout as you did in Rome. Do your worst, for I will do mine. Then the fates will know you as well. Then the fates will know you as we know you, as Albert Mondego, the man." To all my men listening, I got that? Life is a storm. You bask in the sunlight one moment, you wake up one day feeling great, and then you get called into the boss's office saying you're fired. Hey, you gotta be willing to take the hits. All right, no matter how many times you get knocked down, you might be down for the count. You better get your ass up. Better get up. It's like the song by Saint Motel. You gotta get up, move, gotta get up, move. Yeah. That's what that song's about. The song is about this quote from Edmond. Gotta get up, move. Alright? Can't just stay in one spot and accept defeat. It's like I said in my Fight Club review. Don't be a pussy. Alternate versions. The UK version had 6 seconds cut by the BBFC to earn a PG certificate instead of a 15. The cuts were to 2 shots of a man being hung. Oh. It's probably the time that, what's his face? The guy who, again, I can't remember his name. The first mate. Probably the scene where he was hung from the pirate ship. Connections. This movie was featured in the Count of Monte Cristo and Epic Reborn. It's probably some documentary that was made about the movie, either before or after. So, user review. I will read this one user review. It's a bit lengthy. Prepare for adventure. Count on enjoying this. The Count of Monte Cristo is exactly what I expected it to be. Entertaining. A classic? No. However, it's far from a dud, and you could do a lot worse if you want to whittle away a bit of time watching a movie. The movie version of the book leaves a bare-bones plot which is quite simple. Edmond Dantes is falsely imprisoned for treason, having been blackmailed by his friend Fernand Mondego, who covets Dantes' wife-to-be. Cue languishment in prison where he plots his escape and his ultimate revenge on Dantes in a highly fashionable style. This movie is a neat little adaptation of the novel, seeing as it manages to retain some great pacing on screen. At times, admittedly, you feel there's certain pieces rushed, particularly towards the end as Dante's plan unveils, but since it's sufficient to keep the story moving along swiftly, that's okay. The script is nice and witty. There's a real sense of fun permeating the movie, while Caviezel is a serious actor. Guy Pearce is obviously loving his role as the dastardly Mondego, hamming and camping it up with a glee that's delightful to behold. He steals the screen every time he's on it. Other members of the cast similarly light up the movie, particularly Luis Guzman as Dantes' sidekick Jacopo, and a wonderful turn by Richard Harris as the high camp prison warden Abby Faria. I found him hilariously nasty. Richard Harris, he played the prison warden? Okay. The direction of the movie is nice and smooth. There's no need for a fancy trickery here on the part of Kevin Reynolds. Indeed, the smooth, almost gentle nature of it all, including well-placed sword fights, is a nice chance for some of the more overly excessive, energetic work of today's movies. Is the movie perfect? No. It's not smart enough or quite well-made enough for that. But it is a hell of a lot of fun and most certainly enjoyable, and that's often all you want. With its great sense of fun and some lovely performances throughout, it's a worthwhile diversion for a while. I'll give it a 7.8. Yeah, I would agree. I pretty much agree with this user review. This user review has been made by Aidan McGuinness on April 22nd, 2002. So, yeah, I think that this is a fun movie. It's a quick watch. I mean, it's 2 hours and 11 minutes, but it's a really fast-paced movie. The pacing does kind of slow down a bit in the prison scenes slightly, but really I have no complaints. It's just an overall fun movie. It's just an overall, just being able to live vicariously through Edmond Dantes and just having the biggest come up of his life. And it's just a thrill ride. The movie, it's a thrill ride, and I'll just leave it at that. Movie had an estimated $35 million budget. Its gross income in the U.S. and Canada, made over $54 million. Domestically, in the U.S. and Canada. Opening weekend, it made over $11 million, $11.3 million at the box office. Domestically, worldwide, it made $75 million. Runtime 2 hours 11 minutes, so not too long. It's in color, aspect ratio 1.85 to 1. Lastly, I will check the Rotten Tomatoes score. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 73%. Audience score 88%. I probably lean more towards the 73% because, again, it's not a perfect movie. There's no such thing as a perfect movie. It doesn't exist. It's a really, really fun movie that we can all learn from. It's a really fun movie that we can all learn from. And yes, there's a lot of things that are added to the movie for the purpose of the movie. If Alexandre Dumas were here today, I think that he would be satisfied with what we've done with his movie. The critics' consensus is, though it may not reach for any new artistic heights, The Count of Monte Cristo is an old-fashioned yet enjoyable swashbuckler. I completely agree. I completely agree. That is all I've got for this review of The Count of Monte Cristo. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this movie. Just hit me up on, hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Let me know what you guys thought about this. Let me know what you guys thought about this movie, and I might even read some of your replies in a future episode. So, but yeah, 2 tune in next week when we review the movie Elf. Elf, yes, the Christmas movie from 2003, Christmas classic. We'll be reviewing that next week, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to follow Cobbs Corner on all social media. We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Oh, no, we're not on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We are on TikTok. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you liked what you heard today, be sure to give us a 5-star review on all listening platforms, wherever you're listening from. And hope you guys enjoyed your stay here at Cobbs Corner. I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.